AITA for moving out. When my parents asked me to pay rent, I already do their work at home, and I'm Sarah, 23, and the oldest of 6 kids in our middle-class suburban family. 2 years ago, I put my college dreams on hold when my dad had a major health crisis. I thought it would be temporary, but here I am, still at home working part-time, managing the household, and basically raising my 5 siblings. Now, after all this unpaid labor, my parents just dropped a bombshell at dinner. They want me to pay rent. The shock and betrayal I felt in that moment changed everything. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. Please hit subscribe and like if my story resonates with you. Growing up as the eldest of 6 children wasn't always easy, but I loved my siblings and our life together. My parents, James and Lisa, worked hard to provide for us in our 4-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. Dad worked in construction management while Mom juggled part-time jobs between raising kids. My siblings range from 17-year-old Jake down to 5-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, with 13-year-old Mia and 10-year-old Aiden in between. I had always been a good student, maintaining a 3.8 GPA throughout high school despite helping with my younger siblings. When I graduated, I was thrilled to receive a partial scholarship to State University for their psychology program. I had dreams of becoming a child therapist someday. Everything was falling into place until 2 months before I was supposed to leave. Dad suffered a massive heart attack when I was 21. The doctors called it a widowmaker and said he was lucky to survive. Our family was thrown into chaos. Medical bills piled up, and Mom had to take on more work hours to keep us afloat. Someone needed to step up to manage the household and care for my siblings while Dad recovered. And as the oldest, that someone was me. "It's just temporary, sweetie," Mom assured me. "Just defer college for a semester. Dad should be back on his feet by then." I called the university and explained my situation. They were understanding and allowed me to defer my scholarship for 1 year. I picked up a part-time job at a local bookstore to help with expenses while taking care of everything at home. The days were long and exhausting, but I told myself it was temporary. My family needed me. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Dad slowly recovered, but our family dynamic had permanently shifted. Mom had secured a full-time position as an administrative assistant at a law firm. The job paid better than her previous roles, but it meant longer hours. Dad eventually returned to work, though, on reduced hours at first. By the time my deferment period was ending, it had become clear that my parents had grown dependent on my help. When I brought up returning to college, they seemed surprised, as if they'd forgotten that had been the plan. "But who would take care of the kids after school?" Mom asked. "Who would make dinner and help with homework? We can't afford a nanny, Sarah." So I deferred again and again. Now 2 years later, I'm still here. My scholarship long expired, my dreams gathering dust while I manage our household of 8. My typical day starts at 5:30 in the morning. I prepare breakfast for everyone, pack lunches for the school-aged children, and get the younger ones dressed. Dad leaves for work at 6:30 and Mom follows by 7:15. I drive Jake to high school, Mia to middle school, and Aiden to elementary before dropping the twins at kindergarten. I then head to the bookstore where I work from 9 to 2, rushing back home to be there when Aiden gets off the bus at 3:15. The twins finish at 3:30, so I pick them up while Aiden starts his homework. Mia arrives by 4, and Jake usually gets home around 4:30 after sports practice. Between 3 and 7, I help with homework, break up fights, prepare dinner, do laundry, clean the house, and try to give each child some individual attention. Mom gets home around 6, exhausted from her day, and Dad by 7. They eat the dinner I've prepared, spend some time with the kids before bedtime, and then retreat to their room, leaving me to handle the bedtime routines. By the time all the kids are asleep, it's usually past 10, and I collapse into bed too tired to even think about the college courses I sometimes still dream about taking online. Jake has been helpful watching the younger kids occasionally when I need to run errands, but he's a teenager with his own schoolwork and social life. I don't want to burden him too much. Mia tries to help with the twins, but she's still young herself. My social life has dwindled to almost nothing. My high school friends have graduated college by now, starting careers and relationships. Many have moved away. We keep in touch through social media, but their lives have moved forward, while mine remains frozen in time. The only friend I see regularly is Tara, who works with me at the bookstore and occasionally brings coffee to my house on Sundays when things are particularly chaotic. I love my siblings deeply. The twins still crawl into my lap for stories. Aiden shares his school achievements with me first. Mia confides her preteen worries, and even Jake seeks my advice about girls and school pressure. They're the reason I've stayed so long. But lately I've begun to wonder if my sacrifice is even recognized, let alone appreciated. The first time I realized something was seriously wrong with my situation was about 6 months ago. Tara and I were having lunch during our break at the bookstore. She was telling me about her plans to move into a new apartment with her boyfriend. "What about you, Sarah? Ever think about getting your own place?" she asked casually. I laughed it off. "With what time or money?" "Besides, my family needs me." Tara gave me a strange look. "Your dad's healthy now, right? And your mom's working. Why are you still playing mom to your siblings?" Her question caught me off guard. I had been so caught up in the daily routine that I hadn't stepped back to examine my situation objectively. When I explained my typical day to Tara, her jaw dropped. "Sarah, that's insane. You're working a part-time job and a full-time job as a nanny, housekeeper, and cook. Except for the part-time job, you're not getting paid for any of it. Your parents are taking advantage of you." I defended my parents automatically. "They work hard too. We all have to pitch in." "Pitch in, yes. Sacrifice your entire youth and future, no?" Tara countered. "When was the last time you did something just for yourself?" I couldn't remember. That conversation planted a seed of discontent that grew as I began noticing things I had previously accepted as normal, like how my parents would make plans without consulting me, assuming I would be available to watch the kids, or how they would spend money on dinners out for themselves while I ate leftovers with the children, or how they never acknowledged the work I did around the house. When I tried bringing up the possibility of taking one evening class at the community college, my mother sighed dramatically. "I don't know, Sarah. Evenings are so hectic with the kids' activities and homework. Your father and I are exhausted from working all day." The unspoken implication that I wasn't also working all day stung. "It's just one night a week," I pressed. "Jake could watch the younger ones for a few hours. He's 17. Jake needs to focus on his studies if he wants to get into a good college," Mom said pointedly. The irony that my own college dreams had been indefinitely postponed wasn't lost on me. Dad was no better. When I mentioned possibly increasing my hours at the bookstore because they were offering a supervisor position, he frowned. "The twins are still so young, Sarah. They need stability and attention. We can't expect your mother to handle everything when she gets home from work. She's already stressed enough." Again, no mention of my stress or my needs. My 23rd birthday came and went with minimal acknowledgement. Mom picked up a cake on her way home from work, and Dad gave me a gift card to a clothing store. Neither of them seemed to notice that I hadn't bought new clothes in over a year, because all my money went toward gas, my phone bill, and occasionally treating the kids to ice cream or small toys. I had saved very little despite working for 2 years. Between contributing to groceries and household expenses, whenever my parents hinted at financial strain, plus buying necessities for myself. And sometimes the kids, when my parents forgot my bank account, remained depressingly low. As the months passed, I felt increasingly trapped. My few remaining local friends had stopped inviting me out because I almost always had to cancel due to family obligations. My manager at the bookstore had given the supervisor position to someone else after I couldn't commit to regular hours. Even my relationship with my siblings was becoming strained as I found myself snapping at them more often, my patience worn thin by constant demands and little support. Through it all, Tara remained my lifeline to the outside world. She would text me memes during the day to make me smile, occasionally cover my shift if there was a school emergency, and most importantly, she listened without judgment when I needed to vent. "You know this isn't sustainable, right?" she said one day, after I told her about having to miss a doctor's appointment because Mom forgot she had scheduled a hair appointment at the same time, leaving me with the twins. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. "I know, but what can I do?" "They're my family." "Being family doesn't mean being a doormat," Tara said gently. "You deserve a life too, Sarah." The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I had worked the morning shift, picked up the kids' supervised homework, and prepared a chicken casserole for dinner. Mom texted that she'd be home on time, and Dad said he'd stop for garlic bread. We all sat down to eat around 7:30. The conversation flowed normally at first. Jake talked about track team tryouts. Mia complained about her math teacher. Aiden proudly showed a science quiz with an A+, and the twins interrupted everyone with stories from kindergarten. Mom shared office gossip while Dad mentioned a new project his company had landed. Then, as I was clearing plates and serving the brownies I'd baked for dessert, Dad cleared his throat. Your mother and I have been talking, Sarah, and we think it's time you started contributing to household expenses more formally. I paused, brownie pan in hand. What do you mean I already buy groceries sometimes and help with the kids' school supplies? Mom dabbed her lips with a napkin. We mean rent, honey. You're 23 now, living at home using utilities. Most adults your age pay rent. The brownie pan nearly slipped from my hands. Rent. But I do everything around here. I work for free, taking care of the house and the kids. And Dad looked uncomfortable but pressed on. That's family responsibility, Sarah. We all pitch in. But you're an adult now and adults pay their way. We're thinking $600 a month would be fair. $600 was more than half of what I earned at the bookstore. After my other expenses, I'd have almost nothing left. And they were equating my 50-plus hours a week of childcare, cooking, and housekeeping to pitching in family responsibility, I echoed, setting down the brownie pan before I dropped it. So it's my family responsibility to put my entire life on hold, to raise my siblings and manage this household, but it's not your family responsibility to recognize that as work. Mom's expression hardened. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We've supported you your entire life. We're not asking for much. Not asking for much. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Do you have any idea what a full-time nanny for 5 kids would cost you? Or a housekeeper or a cook? Because that's what I've been doing for free while also working part-time to cover my own expenses. Jake looked down at his plate, clearly uncomfortable. Mia's eyes widened and Aiden stopped eating mid-bite. The twins sensed the tension and grew unusually quiet. That's completely different, Dad said dismissively. We're family. Family helps each other. Helps, yes. Takes complete advantage of no. The words came out before I could stop them. Jake has more freedom than I do, and he's 17. When's the last time either of you cooked a meal or did laundry or helped with homework? Mom's face flushed. We work all day to support this family. We're exhausted when we get home. And what do you think I do all day? I challenged. Sit around watching TV, I work too, and then I come home and work more. For no pay, no thanks. And apparently no respect. Dad's voice took on the stern tone he rarely used anymore. You're being ungrateful, Sarah. Many young adults would love to have the support we've given you. Support? I laughed incredulously. I deferred college to help when Dad got sick. That was 2 years ago. I've been running this household since then. And now you want me to pay for the privilege of continuing to be your unpaid servant? Mom stood up abruptly. That's enough. If you feel so burdened by being part of this family, perhaps you should reconsider your attitude. Maybe I should reconsider more than my attitude, I replied quietly. The rest of dinner passed in uncomfortable silence. The twins started crying, picking up on the tension. I automatically soothed them while clearing the table, a task no one offered to help with. After getting the younger kids ready for bed, I retreated to my room and closed the door, something I rarely had time to do. Sitting on my bed, I pulled out a notebook and began calculating. Full-time childcare for 5 children would cost at least $25 an hour. 40 hours a week would be $1,000. Housekeeping for a home our size would run at least $200 per week. Meal preparation, another few hundred. All told, my parents would need to spend over $6,000 monthly to replace my labor, and they wanted me to pay them $600. With shaking hands, I opened my laptop and began searching for affordable apartments in our area. There weren't many, but they existed. I texted Tara. Can we talk tomorrow? I think I need to make some changes. Her reply came instantly. About time. My couch is yours if you need it while you figure things out. For the first time in 2 years, I felt a glimmer of possibility. The 2 weeks after the dinner confrontation were some of the most stressful of my life. On the surface, I tried to maintain normalcy for my siblings' sake. I continued my usual routine work, childcare, cooking, cleaning. But behind the scenes, I was planning my escape. After my shift the next day, Tara and I sat in her car in the bookstore parking lot discussing options. "You can stay with me and Rick for as long as you need," she offered. "Our couch pulls out into a pretty comfortable bed." I was touched by her generosity, but knew it wasn't a long-term solution. "Thanks, but I need to do this right. I need my own place." We spent an hour looking at rental listings on her phone. Most were out of my price range, especially considering I only worked part-time. But I found a small studio apartment in an older building about 20 minutes from my parents' house. The rent was reasonable, though it would still be tight on my current income. "I'll need more hours," I mused. "Or a second job." "Talk to Marianne," Tara suggested, referring to our manager. "She mentioned expanding our weekday evening hours. You could pick up some of those shifts." I had another worry beyond finances. What about the kids? I can't just abandon them. "You're not abandoning them, Sarah. You're their sister, not their mother. Your parents are responsible for them." "But they don't know how to do what I do," I protested. "The twins have specific bedtime routines. Aiden needs help with his reading. Mia's going through some friendship drama she only talks to me about. And Jake, he acts tough, but he's stressed about college applications." Tara took my hands. "Listen to me. You can still be there for your siblings without sacrificing your entire life. But your parents need to step up. They chose to have 6 kids, not you." She was right, but the guilt was overwhelming. That night, I started a detailed care manual for each of my siblings, their routines, preferences, fears, joys, and needs. If I was going to leave, I wanted to make the transition as smooth as possible for them. Over the next few days, I subtly began teaching Jake and Mia some of my household systems. I showed Jake how to use the calendar app I'd created to track everyone's schedules. I taught Mia how to prepare simple meals for the younger ones. I framed it as building life skills rather than preparation for my departure. "Why are you showing me how to sort the laundry by color?" Jake asked suspiciously one afternoon. "You always do that." I kept my tone casual. "Everyone should know basic life skills. You'll need this when you go to college next year." Meanwhile, I contacted the property manager of the studio apartment and arranged a viewing. It was small but clean, with a kitchenette, a bathroom with a tub, and enough space for a bed and small sitting area. The building had laundry facilities in the basement, and utilities were included in the rent. It was far from luxurious, but it represented freedom. I submitted my application the same day and was approved within 48 hours. The property manager, an older woman named Gloria, seemed to sense my urgency. "Running from something, honey?" she asked as I signed the lease with slightly trembling hands. "Starting something," I corrected, though we both knew it was both. I paid the security deposit and first month's rent from my meager savings, wincing as my bank balance dropped dramatically. The apartment would be available in 10 days. At the bookstore, Marianne readily agreed to increase my hours. "I've been wanting to offer you more for months, but you always said you couldn't because of family obligations," she reminded me. I also applied for weekend work at a nearby cafe and was hired on the spot for Saturday and Sunday morning shifts. With housing secured and additional income lined up, the reality of what I was doing began to sink in. Every interaction with my siblings became bittersweet, knowing our daily relationship would soon change dramatically. I spent extra time with each of them, trying to store up memories, while also preparing them subtly for more independence. The twins sensed something was different. One night as I tucked them in, Emma grabbed my hand. "You look sad, Sarah. Are you sick?" I kissed her forehead. "No, sweetie. Just thinking about some grown-up stuff." "Will you always be our big sister?" Ethan asked sleepily. The question nearly broke me. "Always and forever," I promised. No matter what. My parents remained oblivious to my plans. They had mentioned the rent issue once more, setting the 1st of next month as the start date. But otherwise, our interaction remained superficial. They continued making plans, assuming my availability, including a weekend getaway for their anniversary. "You'll watch the kids, right?" Mom said, rather than asked. "We'll leave Friday after work and be back Sunday evening." I agreed, knowing it would be one of my last weekends with my siblings before moving out. What I didn't mention was that I'd already given notice at work that I'd need to change my availability starting the following week. The final straw came 3 days before my apartment would be available. I had made plans with Tara to go see a movie, my first social outing in weeks. I'd arranged for Jake to watch the younger kids for the 3 hours I'd be gone. Mom and Dad knew about these plans. I'd put them on the family calendar and reminded them at breakfast. Yet at 4:30 that afternoon, Mom called. "Your father and I decided to have dinner with the Robertsons tonight. They invited us last minute. We'll leave at 6 and probably be back around 10. No question if I was available. No acknowledgement of my existing plans. Just the assumption that I would, as always, rearrange my life to accommodate theirs. "I have plans tonight, Mom. Remember movie with Tara? Jake is watching the kids." A pause. "Well, you'll need to cancel. Jake mentioned he has a big calculus test tomorrow. He needs to study, not watch his siblings." "Mom, I haven't been out with a friend in over a month. I need this." Her voice turned frosty. "And we need a night out too, Sarah. We work hard all week. Jake really needs to focus on his studies if he wants to get into a good college. You wouldn't want to jeopardize his future, would you?" The manipulation was so transparent it would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. The subtext was clear: Jake's future mattered. Mine didn't. "Fine," I said flatly. "Have a good time." I hung up and texted Tara. "Change of plans. I'm telling them tomorrow." I decided to follow my parents' example and make my announcement at dinner. I spent the day in a state of controlled panic, second-guessing my decision repeatedly, but always coming back to the same conclusion. I couldn't continue living this way. I prepared everyone's favorite foods for dinner: Dad's preferred grilled chicken, Mom's favorite roasted vegetables, Jake's loaded mashed potatoes, Mia's Caesar salad, Aiden's corn on the cob, and homemade mac and cheese for the twins. It felt symbolic somehow, a last supper of sorts. As everyone seated themselves around the table, commenting on the special meal, my heart hammered in my chest. I waited until everyone had been served before speaking. "I have something important to tell you all." I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I found an apartment and I'm moving out this weekend." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the twins stopped eating, sensing the gravity of the moment. Dad recovered first. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, setting down his fork with a clatter. "I'm moving out," I repeated. "I've signed a lease on a studio apartment. I move in on Saturday." Mom's face paled. "This is about the rent, isn't it? If 600 is too much, we can discuss a different amount." I shook my head. "It's not just about the rent, it's about everything. For 2 years, I've put my life on hold to run this household. I've been a parent to my siblings when I'm supposed to be their sister. I've given up my education, my social life, my independence. And not only have you taken all that for granted, you now want me to pay for the privilege." "We've taken you for granted." Dad's voice rose. "We've given you a roof over your head, food, utilities. And in exchange, I've provided you with full-time childcare, housekeeping, cooking, and household management. Do you know what those services would cost if you had to pay for them? Over $6,000 a month." Mom's expression hardened. "So that's how you see your family, as a business transaction?" "No, that's how you see me," I countered. "As free labor you can now charge rent for using." "You're being ridiculous," Dad scoffed. "Family helps family. When I got sick, we needed you. You stepped up. That's what family does." Yes, I stepped up for what was supposed to be a temporary situation. 2 years later, nothing has changed except your expectation that this is now permanent. Jake spoke up unexpectedly. "She's right, Dad. Sarah does everything around here. She hasn't had a life of her own since your heart attack." Mom turned on him. "Stay out of this, Jake. This is between your father, Sarah, and me." "Actually, it affects all of us." Mia chimed in, her 13-year-old voice wavering but determined. "Sarah takes care of us more than you do." Mom's face flushed with anger. "How dare you? We work hard to provide for this family. And then you come home and check out while Sarah continues working," Jake pointed out. "When's the last time either of you cooked dinner or helped with homework, or even knew what was going on in our lives without Sarah telling you?" The twins had begun to cry quietly. Aiden looked confused and scared. I hadn't wanted this to turn into an attack on my parents, especially in front of the younger ones. "Look," I said, trying to de-escalate. "I'm not saying you don't work hard or provide financially. You do, and I appreciate that. What I'm saying is that I also work hard both at my paid job and here at home, and that's not recognized or respected." I need to start building my own life. So you're just going to abandon your family when we need you? Dad's question hit my biggest point of guilt. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'll still see the kids regularly. I'll still be available to help sometimes. But I won't be the default parent anymore. That's your job. We can't afford a nanny, Sarah, Mom cried. You know that with the mortgage and the car payments and all the kids' activities. Then you'll have to figure out a new system, I said firmly. Jake and Mia are old enough to help more. You might need to adjust your work hours. You might need to simplify some things. But those are parent decisions, not mine. Dad pushed back from the table. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by walking out when we need you most. His words stung, but I stood my ground. I've repaid any debt to you many times over with thousands of hours of unpaid labor. It's not walking out to choose my own life. It's growing up and setting healthy boundaries. Boundaries, Dad scoffed. Is that some pop psychology you picked up? Family doesn't have boundaries. Family is there for each other, period. Being there for each other goes both ways, I said quietly. When was the last time either of you asked what I needed or wanted? Neither answered. You owe us, Mom finally said, her voice cold. We raised you. We fed you, clothed you, educated you for 18 years. The statement shocked me into momentary silence. I owe you for raising me, for doing what parents are supposed to do, what you chose to do when you decided to have children. Don't twist my words, Mom snapped. You know what I mean? I do know, I said sadly. You think I'm your property, an investment that should now be paying dividends in the form of free childcare for the siblings you chose to have after me. The twins were crying harder now. Aiden had tears in his eyes too. Even Mia looked upset. This wasn't how I wanted things to go. I'm sorry, I said, looking at my siblings. I didn't mean to upset everyone. I love you all so much. This isn't about you. But I need to do this for me. If you walk out that door, Dad said in a low voice, don't expect us to welcome you back when your little independence experiment fails. The threat hung in the air. Jake stood up abruptly. That's messed up, Dad. Stay out of this, Dad warned. No, Jake insisted. Sarah has done everything for this family for years. She deserved a thank you, not a rent bill, and definitely not a threat. I was touched by Jake's defense, but worried about him facing our parents' anger. It's okay, Jake. I've made my decision. I turned back to my parents. I'm not asking for your blessing, though I'd hope for your understanding. I'm informing you of my decision. I move out Saturday morning. The rest of the evening was tense and emotional. I spent time with each sibling, reassuring them that I wasn't disappearing from their lives. The twins clung to me, not fully understanding, but sensing the change. Aiden asked practical questions about when he would see me. Mia oscillated between supportive comments and anxious questions about how things would work without me. Jake simply hugged me and whispered, "It's about time, but I'll miss you." My parents tried different tactics throughout the evening. Mom vacillated between cold anger and tearful guilt trips. Dad moved from stern disapproval to financial warnings about the cost of living independently. You have no idea how expensive everything is, he lectured. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance. You'll be crawling back within a month when you realize you can't afford it. I've worked it out, I replied calmly. I've increased my hours at the bookstore and taken a weekend job at Riverside Cafe. I'll be tight on money for a while, but I'll manage. And when will you have time to visit your siblings with this work schedule? Mom asked pointedly. I'll make time, quality over quantity. As I packed over the next 2 days, the reality of what I was doing hit me in waves. Each item I placed in boxes represented both an ending and a beginning. The practical challenges of fitting my life into a studio apartment meant making hard choices about what to take and what to leave behind. My parents continued their emotional campaign, alternating between guilt, anger, and dire predictions. They enlisted extended family members to call me, including my grandmother, who tearfully asked why I wanted to break up the family. Through it all, I maintained my resolve, though my emotions ranged from exhilarating freedom to crushing guilt, especially regarding my siblings. The night before my move, I barely slept. I spent time in each sibling's room watching them sleep, memorizing their peaceful faces. I left handwritten letters for each of them, age-appropriate explanations and reassurances tucked under their pillows, to find in the morning. The letter for the twins was simple. I'll always be your big sister. I'm moving to my own house, but I'll visit lots and lots. You can draw me pictures and I'll put them on my refrigerator. I love you bigger than the sky. For Aiden, I'm not going far away. I promise we'll still have our special reading time, just not every day. I've marked some dates on the calendar when I'll come visit. You're getting so good at reading now. Soon you'll be reading to me. I'm proud of you. Mia's was more detailed. This isn't about not loving you or our family. Sometimes grown-ups need to make hard choices to take care of themselves. I'll always be here for you, just a phone call away. We can have sister days where it's just us, and you can tell me about anything anytime. You're becoming such an amazing young woman. For Jake, my co-conspirator. Thank you for understanding. Don't let them put too much on you now that I'm gone. Your job is to be a teenager and prepare for your future. I'm so proud of how you've stood up for what's right. That takes real courage. The morning of my departure was chaotic despite my careful planning. The twins woke up early and came running to my room. Letters clutched in their small hands, faces streaked with tears. "Don't go, Sarah," Emma wailed, throwing herself into my arms. "We'll be good," Ethan promised, his lower lip trembling. Really good. I held them close, my own tears falling. You are already good, the best. This isn't about you being good or bad. It's just something I need to do. And I'll see you very soon. Aiden was stoic but clingy, following me around as I finished packing. Mia fluctuated between supportive statements and sudden tears. Jake helped load my few boxes into the used car I'd purchased recently, a necessary expense for independent living that had further depleted my savings. My parents watched from the doorway, their faces a mix of anger and worry. Mom had barely spoken that morning. Dad made one final attempt as I put the last box in my car. "This isn't too late to reconsider, Sarah. Think about what you're doing to this family." I took a deep breath. I have thought about it for months. I hope someday you'll understand that this is what I need to do. For myself and honestly for our relationship in the long run. "What relationship?" Mom muttered bitterly. "You're choosing yourself over your family." "No," I corrected gently. "I'm choosing myself and my family, just in a healthier way." The final goodbyes with my siblings were heart-wrenching. The twins clung until Jake gently pried them away. Aiden gave me a brave smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mia hugged me fiercely and whispered, "I understand." Jake was last, his lanky teenage frame engulfing me in a hug. "I've got them," he promised quietly. "Go live your life, sis. It's your turn." With one last look at the house that held my entire life, until now, I got into my car and drove toward a future that was both terrifying and exhilarating in its uncertainty. My first week of independence was a study in contradictions. Physically, I was freer than I'd been in years. I could come and go as I pleased. I could eat when and what I wanted. I could shower without someone knocking on the door. I could stay up late or sleep in on my days off. Yet emotionally, I was a wreck. Guilt and worry about my siblings consumed me. Had the twins eaten their vegetables? Was Aiden practicing his reading? Did Mia have someone to talk to about the girl who'd been excluding her at lunch? Was Jake taking on too much responsibility now? My tiny apartment seemed both like a sanctuary and an indictment of my selfishness. The silence after years of constant noise and activity was simultaneously peaceful and deafening. My parents' communication consisted mainly of manipulative texts and calls. Mom sent daily updates clearly designed to make me feel guilty. "Ethan cried himself to sleep again, asking for you," or "Aiden's teacher called because he seems withdrawn at school." Dad took a different approach, focusing on practical failures. "The laundry is piling up because your mother can't figure out your system," or "We ordered pizza 3 nights this week because no one knows how to cook a proper meal." I tried to be supportive without getting pulled back in. "Ethan might like the special song I used to sing him. I can record it and send it to you," I suggested to Mom, or to Dad. I wrote down all the simple dinner recipes in the blue binder in the kitchen. Jake knows where it is. My siblings found ways to contact me despite my parents' obvious discouragement. Jake would call during his walk home from school. Mia sent texts throughout the day. Aiden would get on the phone when Jake called, giving me detailed accounts of his day. The twins sometimes FaceTimed with Mia's help, their small faces filling my screen with exuberant stories and demonstrations of new skills. Meanwhile, I was adjusting to a much busier work schedule. My bookstore hours had increased to 35 per week, and I worked another 15 at the cafe on weekends. The physical exhaustion was different from what I'd experienced at home. This tired came with paychecks and a sense of accomplishment. My apartment slowly transformed from an empty shell to a home. Tara helped me find secondhand furniture, a futon that served as both couch and bed, a small table with 2 chairs, a dresser with a cracked mirror that worked just fine. I hung string lights around the window and put up photos of my siblings. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The first Sunday after I moved out, I received a flurry of increasingly desperate texts from Mom, culminating in a phone call around noon. "This isn't working, Sarah," she said without preamble. "The house is chaos. The twins won't listen to anyone. Aiden refuses to do his reading homework. Mia locked herself in the bathroom for an hour this morning, and your father and I are both exhausted." "I'm sorry it's tough," I said, careful to keep my tone neutral. "Everyone's adjusting to change." "This isn't adjustment. This is complete breakdown. We need you to come home." The words "come home" triggered both longing and resistance. "Mom, it's been 1 week. Of course it's difficult, but you and Dad raised me successfully. You have those same skills for the other kids." "It's different with 6. You know that. We both work full-time. We can't do what you did." "You might need to change some things," I suggested. "Maybe simplify the schedule, or redistribute household responsibilities. Or you could stop this ridiculous independence kick and come back to your family who needs you," she countered, her voice turning sharp. "Isn't that the right thing to do when your family is struggling?" The guilt hit hard, but I remembered Tara's words. Being family doesn't mean being a doormat. "Mom, I love you and the kids, but I'm not coming back. I can offer advice. I can visit. I can take the kids for an afternoon sometimes. But I'm building my own life now." She hung up without another word. Similar calls continued throughout the following weeks. Each time I offered specific suggestions rather than general sympathy or capitulation. I created a detailed chore chart they could implement. I wrote out simple meal plans. I suggested adjusted bedtime routines that Dad or Mom could manage alone if the other was busy. Some of my suggestions were implemented, others ignored. The household slowly found a new equilibrium, though not without struggles. Jake reported that Dad had started cooking simple meals on weekends. Mom had rearranged her work schedule to be home earlier 3 days a week. The twins were adjusting, though they still asked for me frequently. When I visited after 3 weeks, I maintained clear boundaries. I played with the kids, but didn't take over household management. I brought cupcakes, but didn't cook dinner. I listened to Mom's complaints, but didn't offer to solve them. It was hard, but necessary. My parents remained cool toward me, their disappointment and anger evident in every interaction. They made little effort to hide their hope that independent living would prove too difficult, forcing me to return. "That studio must feel pretty cramped," Dad commented during my visit. "And eating alone every night can't be much fun." "Actually, I'm enjoying having my own space," I replied honestly. "And I've started having dinner with colleagues sometimes. Tara and Rick had me over twice last week." Such responses were met with tight smiles and subject changes. As weeks turned to months, my financial situation stabilized somewhat. I was careful with money, shopping sales, and cooking simple meals at home. I started an emergency fund, adding a small amount from each paycheck. I still couldn't afford much beyond necessities, but the freedom to make my own financial decisions was empowering. More importantly, I enrolled in a night class at the community college. Just one course, Introduction to Psychology, but it represented a return to my long-abandoned educational goals. Sitting in that classroom the first night surrounded by other adult learners, I felt a surge of pride and possibility. This was what I had been missing for 2 years, growth challenge movement forward. When I mentioned the class to my mother during a phone call, her response was predictably dismissive. "Well, I hope you can keep up with the workload, what with 2 jobs now. Don't overextend yourself." The subtle implication was clear, she expected failure. But for the first time in years, I wasn't defining success by her expectations or approval. "I think I'll manage," I said simply. "My professor says I have good insights in class discussions." The hardest part of my new independence wasn't financial strain or loneliness or even my parents' disapproval. It was the ongoing worry about my siblings. I checked in regularly, visited when allowed, and maintained our emotional connection. But I couldn't protect them from the dysfunction that had existed before I left and continued after. Jake called one evening in tears, a rare display of emotion from my stoic teenage brother. "I can't do what you did, Sarah," he confessed. "I'm trying to help with the kids and keep up with school and apply to colleges, but it's too much. Dad got mad when I said I needed to study instead of watching the twins. He said I was selfish like you." My heart ached for him. "Listen to me, Jake. You are not responsible for raising your siblings. That's mom and dad's job. Your job is to be a teenager and prepare for your future. Set boundaries. Say no when you need to. Apply to whatever colleges you want, including ones out of state." "But what about the kids?" he asked, echoing my own ongoing concern. "We love them, we support them, but we aren't their parents," I said firmly, trying to convince myself as much as him. "Mom and dad will figure it out because they'll have to, just like they did when I left." 2 months after I moved out, things came to a head. My parents texted asking if we could meet at a coffee shop to discuss the situation. The neutral location suggested they had realized a purely confrontational approach wasn't working. I arrived at the coffee shop with mixed emotions: hope for reconciliation, fear of more manipulation, determination to maintain my boundaries. Mom and Dad were already seated at a corner table, both looking tired, but less angry than I'd seen them recently. "Thanks for coming," Dad began awkwardly after I'd purchased a coffee and joined them. "Of course," I replied, waiting to see where this would go. Mom fidgeted with her napkin. "Things at home have been challenging since you left." "I understand that," I said carefully. "Change is always difficult." "We've tried implementing some of your suggestions," Dad continued. "The chore chart, the meal planning. Some have helped, but it's still not working the way it needs to." I nodded, but remained silent, sensing there was more coming. Mom sighed deeply. "The truth is, Sarah, we didn't realize just how much you were doing until you weren't there doing it anymore. We took you for granted." The admission, though still not a full apology, surprised me. "Thank you for acknowledging that." "We've been thinking," Dad said, glancing at Mom for confirmation, "about a compromise." "What kind of compromise?" I asked cautiously. "We know you value your independence now," Mom explained, "and we respect that decision." The word seemed difficult for her to say. "But the kids need you. We need you. Not full-time like before, but regularly. We'd like to propose a formal arrangement," Dad continued. "Paid babysitting on a set schedule. 3 afternoons a week from school, pick up until dinner. We'd pay you properly for your time." I hadn't expected this. "You want to hire me as a babysitter?" Mom nodded. "We've looked into after-school programs and nannies. They're either too expensive or don't provide the level of care the kids need. No one knows them like you do." I considered the offer carefully. "What about household management, cooking, laundry?" "We're working on those areas," Dad said. "Jake and Mia have taken on age-appropriate chores. Your mom has adjusted her schedule to handle more mornings. I'm doing dinner on my work-from-home days. It's not perfect, but we're figuring it out." "What would the pay be?" I asked, still cautious. They named an amount that was fair for the hours and number of children, far more than I would have expected them to offer. "We should have been paying you all along," Mom admitted quietly. "We didn't see your contribution for what it was work. Valuable work. The acknowledgement meant more than the money." "I'd need some conditions," I said. "Clear boundaries about what is and isn't my responsibility during those hours. No last-minute schedule changes, and respect for my other commitments, including school." They agreed readily, seeming almost relieved by my terms. We hammered out details: which afternoons, exact hours, pay schedule, responsibilities. It felt strange but empowering to negotiate with my parents as equals rather than as their dependent. As our meeting concluded, Dad hesitated, then asked, "Would you like to come for Sunday dinner this weekend? just dinner, not to work. The kids miss you terribly." "I'd like that," I said honestly. "I miss them too." The new arrangement began the following week. 3 afternoons, I picked up Aiden, Mia, and the twins from school and stayed until Mom or Dad came home for dinner. I helped with homework, played games, and gave them the attention they'd been missing. But I no longer did household chores beyond cleaning up any messes we made during my time there. The transition wasn't seamless. My parents occasionally slipped into old patterns, making assumptions or adding tasks beyond our agreement. When this happened, I gently but firmly reminded them of our terms. Sometimes this led to tension, but more often they caught themselves and apologized. The kids adjusted to the new normal. The twins still sometimes asked why I couldn't stay all the time, but they no longer cried when I left. Aiden thrived with the consistent attention during homework time. Mia appreciated having dedicated sister time without household responsibilities looming over us. Jake, preparing for college next fall, seemed relieved to be treated as the teenager he was, rather than a substitute parent. Meanwhile, my own life continued developing. I finished my psychology course with an A and enrolled in 2 classes for the next term. My manager at the bookstore mentioned a full-time position opening up that would include benefits. I made a few friends in my class who were also returning to education after delays. I even met a fellow student named David, who shared my interest in child development. Our coffee after class turned into dinner, which turned into regular dates. For the first time in years, I had space in my life for potential romance. My tiny apartment became a true home, a place where I could invite friends, study without interruption, or simply enjoy quiet solitude after years of constant demands. I decorated with secondhand finds and plants, creating a space that reflected my personality rather than just functionality. The relationship with my parents evolved slowly. There were still difficult moments, misunderstandings, and occasional power struggles. But underneath a new respect was growing. They saw me as an adult with legitimate needs and boundaries. I saw them more clearly too, both their flaws and their efforts to improve. 6 months after moving out, I sat on a bench at the park watching the twins play on the swings, while Aiden and Mia kicked a soccer ball nearby. It was one of my regular afternoons with them, now a cherished part of my week, rather than an inescapable obligation. "Higher, Sarah, push me higher," Emma called from her swing. I obliged, laughing at her delighted squeals. As I pushed, I reflected on how much had changed. I still contributed significantly to my family, but now it was on my terms with clear boundaries and proper compensation. I was building my own life while maintaining meaningful connections with my siblings. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been tears, guilt, anger, and difficult conversations. There would likely be more challenges ahead as we all continued to adjust to new dynamics. But for the first time in years, I felt like Sarah again, not just a substitute parent or household manager. When Mom arrived to pick up the kids, she noticed a textbook peeking out of my bag. "New class this semester. Child psychology," I confirmed. "It's fascinating. Makes me think about how we develop based on family dynamics." She hesitated, then asked, "Going well? Really well? My professor thinks I have a natural insight into developmental stages. Said I should consider pursuing it further." Mom nodded, a flicker of something like pride crossing her face. "You always were good with the kids, not just taking care of them, but understanding them." It wasn't a grand declaration of support for my educational goals, but it was acknowledgement, small steps. As I drove back to my apartment that evening, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for years. The guilt still surfaced, sometimes especially on hard days for the family. The financial struggles of independent living were real. The relationship with my parents remained a work in progress. But I had learned perhaps the most important lesson of my adult life. Loving your family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. True love requires boundaries, respect, and reciprocity. Sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do is step back and require others to stand on their own feet. In my tiny apartment that evening, I opened my laptop to work on a paper. My phone pinged with a text from Jake. "Proud of you, sis. Always." Another from Mia, with a photo of a drawing Emma had made of our family, including me in my other house. These moments of connection reminded me that I hadn't abandoned my family by choosing myself. I had shown them, especially my younger siblings, what healthy independence looks like. Perhaps that was the most valuable lesson I could have taught them. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family obligations and your own well-being? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most growth. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support means everything as I continue sharing these life experiences. Thank you for being here with me today. And remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary.